This is Kimberly Reuter, business advisor and supply chain expert, and welcome back to my podcast, The Morning Mood. We are on episode 2 of The Architects about Amazon Global. We are back with Andrew Miner. Welcome back, Andrew.
Hello.
And today we are going to get a little deep on some of the tech challenges that Andrew faced when he started working on, at the time, it was called DDP, which wasn't actually accurate. Then it was called Timex. So by the time you were involved, you were calling it Timex, correct?
hmm
Okay. So what were some of the challenges? You came in, there had been some attempts to try to get this thing off the ground before. There were a lot of tech challenges, if I recall correctly. So
Yeah.
talk us through what was going on.
Um, at the time, Amazon had just been, I don't know, a year-ish into unbundling their whole software stack. So,
Oh, right.
yeah, the very first version of Amazon was literally one app that
Mm-hmm.
ran on one machine in somebody's closet in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And it would ding every time somebody bought something. Like this was the scale they were operating at. And you'd hear in the closet, ding, ding, ding. Right? That was the early days. We're now many years past that, but still in the kind of typical Amazon fashion, they just kind of grew as fast as they could possibly grow.
Oh, yeah.
And every once in a while, they'd faceplant because of something that, they had technically built themselves into that just stopped working because it tipped over some invisible line down on the floor, faceplant, teeth all everywhere, and
This
they'd have to go
happened
figure
with
it out.
some frequency back then, if I
Alarming regularity, in
alarming
fact.
regularity. Like we had a whole process around it. It happened so often.
That's right. A big part of Amazon culture was dealing with the alarming regularity of shit completely
P1s.
going apart.
Yeah. Was it T1
Um,
P1s?
S1s
S1s.
and
That's what it was.
S2s were the two that you had to get out of bed for.
Sev 1, Sev 2. That's what it was. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So by the time I arrived, we fast forward from dinging machines in the closet, and the software had grown so immense that
Mhm.
every time you went to build the software, it would take more than 24 hours to do the daily build. If you work out the math, this is not actually sustainable.
Yeah.
And this is building a single app.
Because you had to
And
rebuild
so,
the whole thing every time.
because it's one app, you got to
One app.
relink
Yep.
the whole deal. And so, long before my time, folks had already said this is clearly not working. Moreover, the business had moved into office space versus factory, fulfillment space. And so they had one app that ran in the fulfillment center and one app that ran somewhere else. And all of the machines and things in the fulfillment center would launch the app with different kind of startup commands to say,
Yeah.
you're now operating the printing machine, and you're now operating the sorting machine, and you're now. Um, and then that got broken down, and something else got broken. And little by little, Amazon was going from the single monolith to, I don't know if it's fair to say inventing, but pretty close to inventing what we think of now as a microservices architecture.
Yeah. Come with,
And this fit very well with their ethos of how to build teams. Lots
yes.
of teeny tiny teams that focus on exactly one thing, have their own metrics, have their own leadership, and are not entirely autonomous, but basically more like a startup reporting to a board
Yes.
than a team reporting into a director at some other large company.
So let's just spin on that for a minute because you're absolutely right. The environment back then, we had the two pizza teams, which you're going to talk to us a little bit. Now, and I want you to tell us about two pizza teams because I've seen a lot of people out there on LinkedIn talking about two pizza teams and they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah,
I saw somebody the other day was like, the two pizza team was so that you only had a meeting that could, I'm like, no, there was no meetings involved in the two pizza team. That's not what it was about.
yeah.
So I want, yes, I want you
So
to
the
talk to us
name
about it.
itself is kind of cute and
Misleading.
misleading, unfortunately.
Yes.
But the general notion was if you observe human behavior in groups, as you add more people, the group dysfunction degenerates pretty rapidly.
Mhm.
And there's a certain threshold at which things just stop happening. You
Yep.
become bureaucracy.
Mhm.
And Amazon was very keen to move very fast, and they recognized this limitation. And they said, all right, fine. We need to keep our team small.
Yeah.
And the cutesy way that everybody thought about it is, well, your team shouldn't be bigger than needs two pizzas for lunch. I'm like,
Like
okay,
Amazon
that
ever bought
gives
us
you a
lunch,
rough
first of
idea.
all. Let's just back it up. Amazon was not providing lunch.
Amazon was not providing lunch. Amazon was very frugal. We
Yes.
literally made our desks ourselves on our first day out of 2x4s and old doors.
Yeah.
And people tell this, literally, I had one of these desks and I
I
built
had
it
one.
myself on the first day that I started.
I didn't build mine, but I had one, and let me tell you, they were a pantyhose ripper. You cannot
Believe
any
it.
nice sort of clothing because they were
Nope.
all rough underneath.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you couldn't wear nice shit.
Unsanded, little slivers everywhere.
Slivers, splinters all the time. Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
OSHA.
Uh, and so that's the whole deal with the pizzas, right? There was no real pizzas.
There was
It's just
never a
a
pizza.
guideline of
And it was like 8 people is what it was. Like,
ish.
the
Yeah,
number was 6 to 8 people, right?
exactly. If you've
Yeah.
got a bunch of hungry people, you can't feed as many with two pizzas. If you've got a bunch of people who are dieting, you can feed more of them.
Yeah.
But we're not talking two and we're not talking 20.
Yeah. Right. It was
So,
and the whole intent was that they were small teams that were focused on a particular service that they were responsible for, and then each service was kind of graded, right? Whether you were a T1
yeah,
service or a T2 service, whether or not you were customer facing or not customer facing in the order pipeline, not in
yeah.
the import pipeline.
To essentialize all that, every team had one job and only one job.
Yes.
And they
Yeah.
had to come up with their own set of key performance indicators to say whether this job is working. And not every team can do that in dollar terms because
Yes.
if you're the team that's responsible for the picking software, right? People walking around in the warehouse grabbing things for different orders, there's no money in that, right? There's
Right.
no interaction with the customer.
Right.
So they would pick metrics like how many things get picked per hour? How
Yeah.
many miles do their people walk in the course
Yeah.
of a day?
Yeah.
And they get judged based upon those things because you can imagine how that leads to cutting costs or making profit or some combination of the two.
Yeah.
So every single team, including the picking team, which is a two pizza team, and they had their one function. They did this one thing, and they had roughly a half a dozen to a dozen people,
Yeah.
and a single person leading the team who was responsible for the cross-disciplinary result.
Yes.
So,
Talk
as
about
the
that.
two pizza team leader for my team, I was responsible for all of the things working, um, including building the software from scratch if we didn't have the software already that we needed,
Yeah.
which
Which
is
is what
kind of
you ended up
exactly where
doing.
we started off working. So, when I arrived, we were in this migration towards microservices, but we were very much not there yet.
Yeah.
There was some common infrastructure, some of it quite good, because there's a lot of very brilliant engineers working at Amazon at the time, particularly in the core services groups. And they did a
Yeah, they
fantastic
were
job
those
of
guys were
building the
solid,
core
hardcore
tools.
solid. Yeah.
Yes.
Those guys were they were elite. I'm just gonna say it. Like the Gray and Felix and all those guys, those
Mhm.
early core guys were solid,
Yeah.
solid engineers.
Yeah. And they built the infrastructure that um, created Amazon. And honestly, this is also the time period when EC2 first came online. Right. And we don't think about Amazon as being just retail anymore. We always think of Amazon as like being the backbone of the internet. Well, this is literally when that happened. Like EC2 went online while you and I were working there in 2005, 2006.
Talk more about that.
Um, well, the big deal was Q4. So during Q4, if you're a retailer, absolute bedlam rains down on you, no matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing, what aspect of retail you're involved in. Everybody who's ever worked a sales job knows Christmas is hell.
Mhm.
And it was just the same for Amazon as anybody else,
Mhm.
except we had to move our products sometimes hundreds, if not thousands of miles to reach their clients.
Yep.
And so there's that many more things that can go sideways on you in the
Mhm.
process. Um, and I could tell stories for hours and hours about some of the crazy stuff that Amazon did early on to make sure that that happened. Um, Suffice to say, one of the things we tech leaders had to do is to make sure that when the amount of traffic on our services quintupled during Q4, we had enough hardware to meet the demand without just falling over, which meant there's a huge amount of idle hardware the whole rest of the year.
Yep.
And EC2 was born out of an observation that that stuff is really expensive and we should do something with it.
Hmm.
So we should be able to dynamically scale up and down our own stuff
Yep.
by having a system where you can just grab a piece of hardware real quick and scale up and then scale down and release it and let somebody else use it. So we, and then I wasn't involved in any of this, but we, Amazon collectively, um, worked out a plan, figured out how that works. It shipped internally. So when I was managing services there, we kind of had an early version of EC2 ourselves that we got to use,
Yeah.
which meant we got to suffer through all the not quite workings and the like, maybe we'll fix that later kind of things
Hmm.
and growing pains. But that was an integral part of reliability and
Yes.
scaling at Amazon.
Yeah. And
Even
by the
for
way,
teeny
that was,
tiny speculative services like ours, I
yeah.
had to deploy on 9 machines for the
Yeah.
teeniest, tiniest thing because we
Mm.
had to deploy across 3 different data centers
Hmm.
and we had to have 3 machine redundancy for any given service in each data
Yes.
center.
Yes. Oh, data centers. Remember data centers? But back to, I just want to, a little bit on EC2 there, just go back. That was the beginning of AWS.
Yes, that was the very first AWS service.
Very beginning of AWS
Mhm.
was EC2. And interestingly enough, I was involved in that because of the implications for compliance.
Oh, yeah.
If somebody from another country stores their data on our
What does that mean for
servers
international
in the
trade? Sure,
United
yeah,
States,
that
like,
makes sense.
is it, what is it? Like, can you tax it? Is it illegal? What if it's weapons of mass destruction?
Right.
Very interesting early
What if it's
conversation.
content that's not legal in that country?
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah, exactly. Like, and then they export it. Like, who's responsible? Like, lots of conversations about its data. It's there's no.
and all these import-export compliance, I remember one of your earliest lessons is they are stuck in the 1790s.
Oh God, yes. Oh please. We are still arguing over tea. And they still are arguing over tea. Why do you think we can't implement all this tariff crap that's going on? Because they just can't figure it out. But yeah, so he was. So yes, it was a very interesting time. All right, so Amazon is kind of in flux at the time. We're growing. We're trying to become a big grown up company.
Right.
We're doing more microservices. That's where the pizza teams have come from.
Hmm.
So when you jump in, I think you told me that we had to work with on the just the tech side, it was 20 different tech teams?
Yeah, very much so. The way things had been organized by the time I got there, the process of breaking down into services was now full steam ahead. Everybody was on board with this. It was happening. And along with the breaking down of the software comes the breaking down of the teams.
Mhm.
It's Fred Brooks figured out back in the 1960s, the shape of your team, the humans involved, dictates the shape of the software. And so Amazon took that and ran it in reverse. We want to break down our software, so we're going to break down our teams.
Nice. Okay.
And all of that started kind of going through. So we come into this environment, which is still very much in flux, but also there's dozens and dozens of teams at Amazon who are basically given the marching orders, run like your own teeny tiny business and
Mhm.
optimize the shit out of every single thing that you are doing yourself.
You're responsible for, yeah.
Yes. And your like bonus is on the line
Mhm.
for your metrics turning out well at the end of the year. Like
Oh,
this
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
very serious
Yeah.
and
And
very
you
personal.
cannot go to your review and be like, "Yeah, but Scott's team didn't."
No,
Mm.
no,
Nope.
no, wrong.
Nope.
And this is one of the lessons I took away from Amazon is what does it mean to be an executive, right? There's a line you cross at some point in your career where you are paid and judged and retained based on your effort, and then you cross the line and you're now based on your results.
On your influence.
Doesn't matter how hard you worked, doesn't matter what happened or what conditions or crazy market things or the meteor that hit the data center, none of that. You are paid to make sure a thing happens, not just to work hard.
Yes. And we're gonna
And I
get
think
into that a little bit
that's
because
the
the international
definition
space is,
of where that line gets crossed.
yeah, big time.
And then that's kind of how the leaders of pizza teams were seen is
Mhm.
you need to just make sure this happens. I don't care what you have to do. You have carte blanche to go do what you need to do, but you need to make sure it happens. Which for
think
somebody in my
about an
position, I was
environment.
24.
Yeah.
Um, that was kind of unnerving.
Well, and also think about where every single team had the same entitlement, we'll call it, right?
Yes.
So every
Yes.
single team we were working with has gotten the same message. Do
Mhm.
whatever you want to do. You got to meet your goal. Here's your runway. Make it
Right.
happen. And
So coming
so,
back to the tech part of things,
yep.
um, the very first point we had to integrate with for our thing is the ordering service, because that's the first point you surface. Here's what you're going to owe in duties and taxes, whatever.
Yeah.
But the ordering team has this horrible, clunky behemoth that's been hacked with, a chainsaw and a ice pick out of some larger piece of software that they're now trying desperately to make sure it doesn't just plain fall over. Because even
Which
at the time,
again, it
every
did at an
second,
alarming rate
an alarming
back
rate,
then.
even back then, every second that the ordering system was down
Yeah.
cost Amazon something like 10 grand
Back
every second.
then, back then it was about 10 grand per minute. It got
Yeah, per minute.
to, it was over a million. Yeah, a minute.
Yeah, and
There
it
was,
just ballooned from there
yeah, there,
outrageously.
by the time I left ops, we were close to, I think it was a million a minute for every minute that the
Mhm.
ordering pipeline was down. We lost a million in revenue. Yeah.
Yep.
But then it was about 10 grand. Yep.
Yep. So putting that filter on, you then have this teeny tiny team with this stupidly speculative idea for going and selling crap internationally
Oh,
come
yeah.
to you and say, I want to plant some complicated new feature inside of your software. And even worse, we weren't planning to build the computational engine that did the
Yeah.
calculations. We were going to
Yeah.
buy that from somebody else.
Yeah.
And
We ended up
so you
building it,
want to
but
integrate a third party something into our very fragile, very expensive ordering pipeline? I don't think so.
no.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, they were like, "Get out." You and I had we didn't have anything, right?
No.
We were like, "We were told to build this. We're supposed to build this." Like,
No, and moreover, we don't even know where half the teams sit. Like we're
we don't know
brand
anything.
new.
Yeah.
We don't know anybody's names. We don't have any background, no credibility.
There was no cross program management back then. We had some sort of like MPI process, but it wasn't what it is today. We didn't have any sort of program or product
Yep,
management. You went, and we're going to talk about this. You just went and negotiated with the guy who wrote the code. That was it.
that was it.
Yeah.
Or their boss, or their cousin, or God
Or
knows.
whoever had the influence to get the shit done. Like, that's the piece of it, yeah. But so
Yep.
you go into the ordering team, and I believe the ordering team was also just about ready to completely rebuild itself if
Yeah.
they hadn't started already. I can't remember the name of the
The
it was an
shipping team was
Oviedos.
actively in the middle of it,
Yeah.
and the ordering team was making plans.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, the shipping team was in, and we were all moving to more like microservices,
Hmm.
and I think they called it a document model, where it was more like we picked up the information we needed versus carrying it all the way through.
Yep,
I
that
remember that
was kind of the
conversation, I'm
pipe,
not
the
technical.
pipeline part.
The pipeline part, there was big
Yep.
conversations around the pipeline because
We're
what
also moving from a mostly C++ to a mostly Java stack.
Yep,
And depending upon which of the many microservices you were talking to, different ones had done that or not at
yep.
different times, which had its own difficulties. The two languages are very different and have very different considerations for
I
running them and
remember these
maintaining them.
conversations.
Um, so the big innovation was uh, our attempt, and there were several attempts before ours technically to get this off the ground, was to be a microservices thing. I made the call. We're going to do this in Java. We're going to use the latest, greatest infrastructure from
Yep.
this amazing infrastructure team.
I remember you had to sell that too.
I did.
Yeah.
Nobody was interested in hearing about
Nobody
Java. I
wanted to
had to
hear that.
pitch
They were
that.
like, "Nope, nope, nope," and you're like, "No, we gotta do it this way." I remember that.
Um,
That took some selling.
yep. I also brought in the Scrum methodology. There was a few teams here and there that had picked up on that and were using it already. But I was a super big fan from my time at other places, and I was like, nope, we're definitely doing this. And
Yep.
that was another one that had to be pitched because everybody's very skeptical and we're expecting their Gantt charts and everything else. And they're like, what do you mean you don't have a freaking plan?
Yeah, yeah, we never had a plan. It was like, "When are you
Yeah,
dropping code? Can I slide this in?" Like,
that was very
shit, that was
alarming to
it.
certain elements that we had to deal with. Um, and that's kind of how it went. And then the one hiccup in all of this is the ordering people very rightly said, we get hundreds of thousands of orders per day easily, like, and the number keeps growing hugely, exponentially, in fact. And we're not going to call you for every single one of those and have you say 99.999% of the time, this
Because
is
at the
not an
time,
international order.
yes,
You
at
know,
the
one,
time,
you're
our
going to have
stats
to
were
buy
low.
100 machines in
Yeah.
order to say no 100,000 times a minute.
I remember that. We
And
were like,
so,
"Oh, I don't know.
and so
How do we do
part of the
this?"
deal was we kind of had this hybrid model where it's not a pure service model,
Yeah.
at least from a team organization point of view.
Yep.
My team wrote some C++ code that went into the order pipeline, but just the teeniest, tiniest little version of that. And even then, they're like, where are you getting your configuration data from? Like, we're not okay with ordering not being able to start up successfully because your service happens to be offline at the moment. That
Is
is a
lagged. Yeah.
disaster.
Yeah. I remember this
And
too.
so
We
we
had to
had to
bring it
figure out
in-house.
this whole methodology for a subset of the deployment data,
Yep.
the like configuration data being deployed with the code, and then getting the more full and robust set later on, and exactly how that trade-off went. And it was a lot of negotiating back and forth to satisfy their positive need for stability and predictability and our desire to get this extra feature worked into the system somehow.
Yeah.
And that was just the beginning because ordering was the first of about 24 teams that we had to have exactly this conversation with over and over and over again.
Yeah.
For the most part, fortunately, we had moved to what you rightly call a document model, where there's an opaque container of order stuff
Yeah.
that just gets handed off like an envelope from one team to the next team. But that wasn't actually built yet. That's what they
Yeah.
wanted to
They
be
were in the
doing, but it
process
didn't
of building
really
it.
exist.
Yes.
And
Well, they tried
so
to push us
every
off. They're
single
like, "But just
team,
wait, wait, wait. We got this thing coming." We're like, "No,
yeah, no, we can't wait. That's not how
no,
this goes. We got to ship
no."
this like tomorrow.
Yeah, I got like 9 months on the rest of my room right here. I gotta do this.
Yeah. And so for the tech part and whatnot, yeah, it was mostly me. I think you got involved sometimes. I think I would like tag team you in when somebody was being difficult.
We would tag team.
Um,
For the most part, you ran everything with the engineers. I
yeah.
would get involved when we needed prioritization and we
Hmm.
couldn't get something done because they had other priorities or
Right.
whatever. But you and I both did a ton of horse trading.
Yep.
You traded engineers left and right. You did work for other teams so that they could do work for us.
Hmm.
I did work for the engineers. Like, you need me to write something, go tell the other people they're not going to get what they want. Like, we really, and we're going to get into this a little bit more in our next episode because I do want to spend a lot of time, or not a lot of time, an episode. I want you and I to talk about how we were able to make this successful
Hmm.
when 5 other attempts or 4 other attempts, whatever it was, were not. Like, what did
Yep.
we do differently? Because people do ask me that. They're like, "Well, that's interesting. What did you do differently?" And we did 2 things differently. And we're gonna get into that in our next episode.
Hmm.
But so on your side, you're working with 20 plus teams, and then we'll get into a little bit more on what's going on the business side because I'm in tax and legal's back pocket every day. Like, we are besties. They're trying to figure out how to charge me. I'm like, no, you got to talk to Big G. I don't have any money.
Yep.
And then, and then on my side, we had to go earn the trust of all of the merchant teams who had previously kind of gotten sucked into this and it had not been successful. They had vendors who were upset. There were legal requirements that were broken. And so there was a lot of trust building that was happening on the business side of this as well.
Absolutely.
And you were up against it because we walked into this thing that had been sort of, it was, I didn't, I was kind of a turd that had been floating around in the bowl for a while. And everybody was like, no, 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 no. We already saw
We've
that.
heard this story before. No,
Yeah, we
thank you.
heard the story before. Yeah. So we had to tell a different story. Excellent episode. Thank you, Andrew. And we will be back with another episode to talk about what was going on the business side. More soon. Thanks, everybody.